All right, welcome back to the show, everybody. Now we're talking with Molly Elmore right here. And you know what? The last time I had Molly Elmore on this show, well, I got my ass tore up, to be perfectly honest. Molly, you and I were having a private conference, and you inspired me with something you said. It put me on a monologue. I shared it. We were out of town when I shared it, and I shared that, and everybody thought, well, this is a horrible interview. You talked over Molly the whole time. It wasn't even intended to be an interview, and I appreciated you letting me share that material. So it is only fitting we get you here today to hear you do all the talking.
All good. I just wish I hadn't been slouched over my chair in that video because I didn't realize it was going on YouTube. All good.
You never know when inspiration strikes.
That is true. We have some amazing conversations too, privately, that probably more people would be interested in hearing.
Yeah, I think that's absolutely true. And you're right about that. And it would be nice at some point to be able to share a few of those conversations with everybody. I think they would really enjoy that. But today we're going to do that. But what are we talking about today, Molly?
First thing I would love to dig into with you is this idea of division and tribalism within crypto as a whole, and even within the XRP community. I think this has been on my mind recently because I've been sharing some of the model results for the Buyback Committee, which is simply looking to establish the fair market value of XRP. And we have this very clear division where one group is super excited that we are looking to assess the value, potentially use it in a situation of like a class action lawsuit against the SEC, and just even have greater clarity as to what is this asset that we hold and how do you actually determine its value. Then we have another group who seems to be more focused on the tech side, who's vehemently opposed to even having this conversation. I've been accused of bizarre things I've never been accused of in my life, being a grifter and a con artist of sorts. I'm like, we're building like a math model that's not usually very grifter-like, and no one's getting paid to do any of this. But I think their concern is more that it's a distraction. However, the frustrating part for me that's actually kind of upsetting is we all want the same thing. We're fighting because I think there's a lot of frustration and pent up, desire to have these problems be solved, and we feel a little bit powerless to solve them, specifically the situation with Ripple and the SEC. Like, none of us can really do anything about that. And that has caused a tremendous amount of harm. It's caused harm to investors who wanted to see their portfolios grow. I mean, you have a lot of people who don't have an abundant amount of money. They chose to invest in an asset, hoping that over the couple of years it would go up in value, and it's kind of been stuck. And then you have this developer community who believes in the technology, the XRP ledger. They know that it's a top performer, if not the top performer. Projects and use cases should be built on there, but we have not seen the adoption of the XRP ledger as a blockchain relative to other ones. So that's frustrating. So you see these two sides kind of both mad at the same time, but instead of focusing our energy to really who is responsible, I see a lot of infighting with each other. And this I see play out a lot on Twitter. It's very easy to be a keyboard warrior and kind of throw around slurs and names and judgments. But my dream is that we come together as a group and say, you know what? The development on the ledger and the value of the asset have both been harmed by the unlawful actions of the SEC. They are corrupt. They are colluding with the banking cartel. They're playing out their own little turf war. And a lot of people and projects are collateral damage from that action.
I think it's well said. I certainly am inclined to agree with you. I do believe that there is regulatory capture of the SEC at the very least, and we may be able to have a conversation deeper than that based on where all the money went with SBF in the Congress, right? So there's a whole nother conversation there. But understanding the division that's going on in the space right now, and it's really kind of developers versus retail, or some retail, not all retail, right? Because not all retail, is supportive of the confidential committee, in full disclosure, right? But I do want to say, for one, I'm never going to name call. For one, I'm never going to throw slurs around or try to cancel somebody by putting a label around their neck like a boat anchor. I think that's unprofessional, and I think it speaks to a lack of integrity on any side of the fence that takes place, because it eliminates the possibility to have a civil discussion where we can get the best out of one another. The other thing I wanted to say, to the point you were making, is that to the developers. I am not a developer. I couldn't be more grateful for people who have a developer mind and the inclination to pursue it. Because if the XRP ledger was up to me, it'd be strings in a tomato can. And side chains would be more strings and more tomato cans. So we all have attributes and specialties, and whether we're understanding something or whether we're missing something, I still believe that we all have the possibility of learning something. And matter of fact, I think Matt Hamilton, even who you've had in-depth conversations with, has a really great quote about that on his Twitter page and his profile, I believe. I can't quote it right now, but it's something to that effect, which I like a lot. But let's talk about that division. Where do you want to start there about that?
So the thing that surprises me is that I've worked with developers for decades. My career in internet research I worked at software companies essentially that had measurement products. And my job was to help our developer team build things that our clients wanted. I know how developers think. I'm married to a software developer. They're my people. I get them. And this idea that now I'm sort of on the other side of the fence from the software developer group, I don't like that. I'm not happy with that. And I'm actively looking to repair that. I'm actually very fortunate that on Monday, Matt is actually going to meet with me for my YouTube show. And we're going to talk about some concepts related to tokenization and some of the ways these assets could be valued and the utility aspect. And my real desire out of that conversation is for us to find our common ground and see that we really do want the same thing. I am not looking to give hopium or false expectations around the value of XRP via these models. One thing that people, I think, misinterpret, if it's okay if I explain this, is that the models are not predictions or forecasts. They are scenarios about what could have happened if there had been no SEC lawsuit. And here's the sad part of the story, is that it happened. You can't unscramble an egg. That damage was done. So even if we build a model that says this asset could have been worth 100K, it's not going to happen in the timeline that it could have because of the damage that was caused. So if anything, we're kind of being a little bit of a downer, like a tease, saying, this is what it could have been. Sorry, but it's not going to be because we saw all of this damage caused by our corrupt government. Now, do I think that once this is resolved and the XRP ledger is allowed to evolve and grow as it was naturally intended to do? Yeah. And I think humans are amazing and resilient, and we will catch up and we will make up for that lost time. But I think one key thing that is really important for people to understand is my motivations with this whole valuation project is to help uncover totally unacceptable behavior on the part of the US government. And by talking about what the value could have been, kind of put some numbers to that damage, so that if somebody hopefully is held accountable one day, it's some concrete data. And when you put models into the public realm, it kind of functions a little bit like an affidavit. And then if no one challenges them at a certain point, they kind of become a basis for comparison, even sort of fact per se, that you could use in a trial if that were necessary. That's why we're building multiple models. So there'll be multiple valuation systems. And then if there were a court case, you now have some tools in the tool belt to quantify the harm that was caused by the SEC.
Very well said. And, I hope through the sit down with Matt Hamilton, because he's such a brilliant mind guy. I mean, there's no question. You could see that if you just follow him, or Bob Way, obviously, as well, who was a part of the conversation a few weeks ago as well. But they have so much to contribute. It would be nice to see some kind of collaboration of, from the developer side and let's just call it retail side, right? The retail investor side, to be but collaboration doesn't mean I'm just going to clay pigeon that everything comes out of the gate. I mean, contributions of, think of this way. I hope that's what comes out of your sit down with him, is that Matt will be able to contribute from the developer technical side and be like you said, it's about tokenization, right? So hopefully he'll be able to shed some clarity to where you and the confidential committee and people doing value estimations or formulas or that kind of thing you're working on those things, we'll be able to eliminate some things and say, okay, we don't need to think of it this way. Let's think of it this way to get more of a realization of adoption and what would maybe be a price or could have been.
Correct. And, this whole valuation project is based on blockchain technology, and the more technically apt people who are smart at this stuff and have experience specifically with XRP Ledger, the better. There is a separate technology subcommittee within the greater Buyback project. I'm not on that, but they meet to discuss some of the technical aspects of, if we did have some kind of a deal negotiated, how would that play out from a tech perspective? But I think to have Matt even chime in on, if it were up to him to forecast what would the value be if certain conditions were met, I would love for him to kind of walk me through how he would build that. I don't think that's something tech people generally worry about or care about, because it's sort of a hypothetical scenario where developers tend to like a problem that they are tasked with solving. Developers have constraints and rules, basically programming language. You can't just do things that the programming language won't allow. And their job is generally to execute the solution to a problem within parameters. And hypotheticals, I think sometimes are like, why are you wasting your time with a hypothetical? Give me an actual problem that I can write code to solve. So I think that's part of the disconnect here, is they're like, you're doing something that's not going to accomplish a specific result. And programmers live in, I'm making some generalizations here, but many developers live in this world where they're given a task, problem to solve, and they write code to solve it. I think the disconnect here with this hypothetical exercise is that we are looking to create a cutting edge methodology for valuing an asset that is unlike any other. And that methodology does not exist. And the way you create it is you've got to do a lot of trial and error. You got to build a bunch of models that maybe aren't right and don't work. But if you don't start, like, they didn't build built the light bulb. He didn't do it in one try. Like, I think there was, why am I blanking?
10,000 tries.
Yes. I mean, he did over and over. And then finally at the end, it arrived at that thing. So if you're an inventor, you don't just wake up one day and invent a thing. You have to create many, many iterations and versions of it.
Well, I hope through all of this, he's able to bring some elements that can be incorporated into the decision-making process or the thought exercise that takes place inside the valuation committee or confidential committee there.
He's not my enemy. I would
like
him to be an ally and on my side and our side collectively, so that we can move forward to solve the problems that we want to solve.
I completely feel that way too. I mean, his contribution is so huge to the XRP ledger, and I have nothing but oodles mucho respect for what anybody can do, especially somebody that has traits and skill sets that I don't. Like I said, there's if you want an XRP ledger and you can leave it up to me, it's shoestring and it's tomato can. It is not good, Molly. It is not good what's going to happen. So very grateful for his insight and input, and I'd love to hear what's going to come out of that. So let's change gears a little bit if we could.
All right.
Right. So let's talk about the idea and understanding of how one could begin to either make XRP a stable coin or collateralize it, launch a stable coin off of XRP with collateral on XRP. Let's talk about just some of these things loosely, macro view, to just try to understand them. Do you want to just grab something and start going with it?
So one thing I think is difficult to sort of embrace initially is that the whole idea of money is based on human agreements. Like, you and I decide that we're going to, adopt this system where this dollar bill has a certain amount of buying power. And humans have made an agreement that gold is valuable. Like, why not, quartz that's out in the yard? And we have just decided collectively as humanity that certain things have value. That value is absolutely subjective. Sometimes it is determined by a buyer-seller market mechanism, but more often than not, it's decided by governments and central banks who just simply say, hey, the price of $1 is worth X point whatever gold. And like at the Plaza Accord, we're now going to have fixed exchange rates between certain countries to sort of reset things. So the idea that the technology and the market always decide the value of something is very short-sighted, because we've repeatedly seen that human agreements at the government level come in and do that. And that is one of the hypotheses that we are exploring with Buyback Project, is like, all right, what happens if the government comes along and sets this price? And this price is very high because they have some kind of plan or agenda for the new monetary system. And they've made this agreement that the value can be XYZ. That is totally possible. They've done that kind of thing in the past, and it has really nothing to do with technology. It's agreements between people.
I come back to what you just shared there. And if I wanted to incorporate like what I believe to be, and I'm by no means a lawyer or representing the developer community, but because they're very, very grounded, right, in how they look and analyze material, most of them, right, and the ones that have been vocal. I'm reminded of what Miguel Villas said, former head of XRP Global Markets. Okay. Liquidity plus utility over time equals value.
Totally agree. Yeah. Totally agree.
Right. And what's interesting about that is that you could create a lot of scenarios just with that general formula, right? So like, I mean, if we understand that the XRP ledger is, I believe, the world exchange, which is yet to be completely plugged into, right? Mm-hmm. And you have over 60 major stock exchanges. You have over 100 commodity exchanges around the world, major exchanges. And then you have 7.5 trillion FX market per day. And slowly over time, some of those 60 major stock markets plug into the DEX. Some of the commodities are plugging into the DEX, right? It's not all of them at once, right? It's 3 here, it's 4 there, 2 did it, 1 did, right? They're all plugging into the DEX. What this is ultimately doing, when I understand the vision of the ledger as a world exchange, decentralized exchange, is this begins to bring and connect the liquidity of the world in the FX market, the 7.5 trillion per day. You're really starting to connect, and they've already started from the lower exotic currency corridors, which makes it easier to cover that spread through seigniorage, right? Where they can say, hey, use the XRP instead of the traditional path you used to use. And then slowly you build it up. And that liquidity begats more utility, and so on, is how I naturally see it. And again, as the world exchange as a backbone, and all the exchanges from everything of value plugging in, especially as they all become tokenized, all the commodities, right, all the derivatives, all of these things, you really are plugging into the DEX and creating this flow of liquidity. Now think about the automated market makers that David Schwartz was so excited about. With all of this stuff in there, markets being made from this to that and that to this instantly, and the automated market makers make sure that arbitrage is squashed out of the system, right? So you have the most exact price feed, then bring in the patent designs from Bob Way, which allow you to source across multiple networks to settle one single transaction for the first time in history. That's what those patent designs do, which create a protection to make sure that there's never a dry pocket of liquidity somewhere because you kept sourcing the transaction from here, and now it's gone, right? But if you're sourcing this balanced over multiple network providers, let's say in RippleNet and on-demand liquidity participants, then you're never going to hit a dry pocket because they always take it balanced, and whatever's being traded is got an automated market maker making sure that there's no real arbitrage that's available, and if it is, it's eliminated instantly. Then we start to see, I believe, what the ultimate end goal is. And my goodness, what does the price of XRP look like then? And then I start thinking, well, it comes back to how you opened up this conversation. Why are we so tribal when the ultimate goal, whether you believe it the way I just laid down or the confidential committee just doing a mass kind of putting it all together, the end goal is the same thing. It's really about whether we get there quickly or we get there over time is really the only difference I see. And bringing back to your point again, the real enemy, the real adversity here is the United States government holding us down. And there's a very real SEC versus Ripple case that could quite possibly come out that harms retail investors, XRP holders, and how we get it going forward, which is why we got a guy, Field General John Deaton, on the scene representing 76,000 XRP holders. What say you, Molly?
I think it's such a sad story that we live in this country with incredible innovators. We have a history of being inventors and builders and designers of truly world-class products, including technology. And our biggest problem is our own government stifling that innovation. That's sad and ugly and gross. I was had a meeting today with Jay from Spend the Bits, who has this incredible software program application being built on the XRP ledger. Tons of interest globally for this service to help move value between people and businesses. And he is not participating in the United States, like the biggest market in the world. And he's like, I can't do it. There's just too much regulatory uncertainty, which is tragic and sad. Like, that's not how it's supposed to be. And what frustrates me is, like, I don't know what to do about it because we have this corruption. I can post lots of things on Twitter. We can make videos about it. But at the end of the day, we need a government that actually has our best interests at heart. I'm at this point now where I'm like, let's just get rid of Congress, because I think they provide zero value. And if we just started over and created a brand new system, we probably would be much better off than trying to even repair the very broken and damaged one we have right now.
I couldn't agree more. You know, there will always, I think it was Thomas Jefferson said, there will be always a few that hold, you know, government in contempt. I am one of those. I stand in neither aisle. You know what I mean? And it's like, I'm the curmudgeon when it comes to government that you're just never going to make happy, because I don't trust any of them. Doesn't matter who's in there. It always seems like there's a jockey for power. And then once they get it, they just power broker for their own lobbyists. And then they come up with some talking point for their party and their party base to satisfy the need of what is going on. And it's just, it's very disheartening, very disheartening.
I have a very entrepreneurial spirit. I've come from online technology startups. And if you don't do what you need to do, like, you're out. Like, the system just chews you up and spits you out. And the idea that the government has had years to create regulation, and they have this excuse like, oh, we haven't done it. If that were a business, like, they wouldn't exist. So there's a double standard. I do not like double standards at all. And they are held to a standard of incompetence that the rest of us would absolutely not be allowed to embody. And that, I find that a big problem.
Yeah, I agree. So now let's share with the audience here that you work very closely with me and Mrs. Backup and members inside the Digital Perspective Mastermind group. Talk about that a little bit, if you would.
I do. So I am also a big fan of online learning. While we also have corruption in the government, I also think that there are some serious inefficiencies in the education system. And the technology education programs, like if you were to go to school to learn how to be, you know, a blockchain developer, or I've recently learned, you know, a lot of online software to teach education programs, it would be outdated so quickly that, like, the school system can't really accommodate it. So programs like ours, help people learn from people who are not more knowledgeable than they are, in a system that allows us to update the content regularly. Like, we can turn around videos so quickly that the class can be current, where in the traditional sort of university system, no professor is recording videos like the day before. Like, you're using textbooks that have been printed years ago. And so we're able, as an online education community, able to keep people more current with technology skills that are changing and evolving at a very rapid pace. So I'm super excited and bullish about the online learning space. I think kids also can have the opportunity to learn things that are more cutting edge, that just the school system, I'm not trying to diss the school system, you know, it sounds like I am, but they're just not evolving as quickly as our current world needs them to.
I agree. And I must say that the collective of the Digital Perspective Mastermind group is super, super brilliant. And there is not just safety in numbers, there is empowerment in numbers, right? Because there's access to real people who be like, hey, I've done that before. I might try it this way if I were you, or this is what I found for myself when I did ABC 1, 2, 3. There is so much in there that can save people so much time, whether it's a simple question about Flare or whether it's something that you're trying to adjust about your own mindset for wealth creation, because we have that inside the course too. So it is a pleasure to have you as an instructor inside of this course and then with this group of people, because it is my next challenge. I've been very clear to people about that, you know, people are like, well, what's your next goal? What's your next challenge? This group is my next goal and next challenge. And speaking of that, we are going to be having the first ever XRP Army meetup conference, actually,
Yes.
of a lifetime. I'm excited, Molly.
I am super excited. It's going to be fantastic. I know who a lot of the secret guests are, and when people find out, they are going to be giddy with excitement.
They really are. I'm giddy right now, and I want to say stuff, and I can't say stuff. I mean, gee whiz, I'm so excited. But I tell people, you know, click the link underneath the video, put your name on that email list. You will get an email, but it will be a capped event. There will be a limited number of seats. It's just the way it is. Vegas is Vegas. It's a busy weekend. We've been talking to a lot of places out there, and we're about to lock it down and blow this thing up to the moon. So couldn't be more excited where things are going. I couldn't be more excited that you're going to sit down with Matt Hamilton and that you are working with us in the group. What's your final thought before we go out of here today?
I think one of the things that I love too about the Digital Perspectives Mastermind is that sometimes learning new things like blockchain technology and investing in digital assets can be kind of a lonely and intimidating road. And when people get frustrated with something because maybe it's hard or confusing, they tend to just quit. Where when you join a program and you make an investment in yourself and in your education, and you're now part of something that is bigger than just you, it can really help you pull you along during those days when you maybe don't feel like it, or you're like, this is just not worth the time. And that's why I really love group programs like the Digital Perspectives Mastermind, because you're not doing it alone. Like, we're in it together. And not only are there instructors who teach you, but your peers are going to teach you as well. One of the best ways to learn is by asking questions. And when you are in an environment where you feel like it's okay to do that and you're not going to get judged or attacked, which quite honestly on Twitter is very likely. So to be in a more of a private environment, I think gives people the space to learn at a much more rapid pace than they would on their own.
Absolutely. Well said. Molly, thank you. This is one of many, I assure you. And I cannot wait to see your video with Matt Hamilton. Shout out to him. Shout out to Bob Way and everybody else out there who has the ability to contribute to this conversation. And I can't wait to hear their insights and perspectives. We'll catch you on the next one, Molly.
All right. Thanks, Brad.
You got it.